Hi, do you have a Samsung tablet with a crappy proprietary port? You know those really long things, much longer than a micro USB? And then you have to buy specific Samsung cables for it all the time, instead of something small like what you see right now? Well, this is the video for you then, where I attempt to change the big port into the small one. So you have to start off by taking this Samsung cable, the original one that came with the tablet, or whatever you might have bought that copies it, similar to an iPad cable as well. What you have to do though is take it apart and reverse engineer it. You don't have to do that specifically though, since I've already done it in this video, so rather watch until the end so you don't have to do the same thing as I did. But this is maybe interesting to see so you know how I got there. The idea is to break it apart so that you can see the pins and then see which ones go where inside the tablet so that you know which pins to solder onto for your replacement port. So as you can see, it was quite a struggle just to open this stupid plug up. I've tried many different tools on it. So I noticed that these two wires on the inside here had actually fallen off, which is the original reason why this stopped working, I think. So they'll need to be resoldered for me to test. So now it's time to get the plug open on the other side of the cable, and this was not any easier. So yeah, we can at least see the different color wires inside of the cable, which match up to the pins, which is useful. So now what we want to do is open up the tablet so that we can get at that port. So I'll basically just show you visually how I opened it up. Okay, now we have it open, and here is the port. So this is the micro USB port I want to replace that with. Something like that. You can get that port off old phones and things like that. I happened to just buy a new one that had a little board attached to it. I'm going to take the ribbon out. I'm just taking off this covering so that I can see the pins. just going to go ahead and plug that in. Yeah, I'm just repairing those two wires we saw hanging. And now we can use a multimeter in continuity mode so that we can see which pin corresponds to which pin on the ribbon. So I'm checking the pins on the plug itself, just to get a general idea of what is what. Then on the ribbon itself, I can now go through each wire, each pin on the left. First I check ground, that works. Then I go along and I slide along here until I hear the beep, and then I know which pin on the USB corresponds to which pin on this port. I only found this after I did all that, but I guess it was good to do it anyway, just to make sure I was right and that image was still valid. Now, here's me being an idiot again, trying to get the port off of the ribbon. I didn't realize it was actually soldered underneath there as well, which makes sense. And at this stage I did not have a hot air gun, so I had to get creative. I pried it a little bit with tools, and then I had a soldering gun on the side at the same time to heat the whole thing up. And that slowly enabled me to get it apart. The way I'm removing this is pretty destructive, so there's no real going back afterwards. It's a crappy port though anyway, so whatever. So I finally got it upright. Now I can just wiggle that off. And there you have it. This is the inside of a relay. And all a relay is a coil that creates a magnet when current runs through it and moves these pieces of metal together to close the circuit. So what I want it for though is that thin wire that it makes up the coil, because it has a covering around it and it's super small, which is perfect for soldering onto those tiny pins on the ribbon. And because they're covered, they won't short out anything else that they touch. So here's me trying to do microscopic soldering with this thin wire on those microscopic pins. It's not super easy, but after a lot of pain and suffering, we eventually got there. Just testing with continuity test on the multimeter to make sure that it's working. So I cut off a few pieces of magnet wire and I did a little test just with the positive 5 volts and the negative, and I attached a micro USB and it is charging. Now the thing to note with these tablets, most smart devices, is that they will charge very slowly if you just give them the 5 volts and the negative, because of the USB 2 spec. So if you want to charge faster, you have to have the data wires as well. And as you can see in this image, I've kind of destroyed those pads. There, it just broke off. Sorry for the bad zoom. So I realized that, oh no, I'm not going to get it to charge properly, which means even when you have it plugged in, it charges super slowly and doesn't even charge enough to keep it running. So this is the port where the ribbon used to go into, so I decided I would just solder the wires directly onto the motherboard at this port. and basically bypass the ribbon altogether because I'm an idiot. If I didn't damage that, I could have used it as my original plan intended. But this time I'm doing this. Now, to get the pins right on here was also a bit tricky because the ribbon sort of has parts where it crosses over and goes through, and some parts are thicker than others. And it's all very tiny as well. You need a magnifying glass just to see what's going on. And I actually managed to get those pins wrong quite a few times and hooked it up and simply got errors on the PC and etc. But luckily, it seems that the tablet had enough safety, or I had enough luck, that it didn't actually break anything, any circuitry on the motherboard. So, even though I got it wrong a few times, you'll see at the end of the video which pins I wired it up to. And then I actually got it right and it worked. And here it is charging again. And this time I still had the cross on the battery, unfortunately, which means I got the data connection wrong. So I took out the motherboard to see if I could see where that was all going to, and realized that, wow, these boards are pretty advanced and that cannot even see traces on the board. I soldered the micro USB to the ribbon over here, and I took little bits of magnet wire and soldered to the correct pins on the ribbon, as you can see here. All very frustrating because it's so microscopic. Then I tested it, plugging in a micro USB again. So here it's just power and ground. Positive and negative, no data at the moment. Then I decided to 3D print a housing to keep it in place inside the tablet enclosure. Just so that when you push down on it, this should hopefully be as accurate as possible to stop it from pushing back and breaking off. That fits pretty well. And this fits on top. Now it's time to close it up again. And back to the finished result. Now, unfortunately, using it a few times, it actually broke off the ribbon inside, so I decided to go with plan B, which is this. Connected directly to the board and wired directly to the port there, skipping the ribbon altogether. Because basically I turned it into a kiosk, so it didn't need to be mobile, so it got a bit messy, but this was the end result and it actually worked. So you could be more perfect than me and actually get it done right. This is sort of like a proof of concept.